Hello, everyone. On today's episode, I have one of the Seedcamp founders that I really, really enjoy spending time with and working with, partially because it's an area that I'm also partial to, which is cybersecurity, but also because he's doing some really interesting stuff in the space in light of what many people take for granted, which is how to take care of a lot of the applications that your employees use. So, on that note, welcome, Johannes.
Hello, Carlos.
Johannes, one of the things that I really enjoy about the way that you and your colleagues operate is that you guys are very much like, you say something and you guys, the next week I find out that you guys are shipping. And I wanted to understand a little bit about, where you came to do what you're doing now with Cakewalk. What was your background? What made you think about doing this? Is it something that you always were passionate about, or was this something that you sort of stumbled upon through triangulation? Just tell us the story of how you got to where you are today.
I mean, I've spent quite some time in digital health and in healthcare, right? And healthcare obviously deals with very sensitive patient data. So there's a lot at stake. And I've a couple of times, I guess the worst situation was suddenly learning about a huge database that the team created on Airtable. Yeah. I love Airtable. But I didn't love that database because there was like really, really, really sensitive private patient data on that Airtable database, and no one knew about it. That's the first time when I myself like understood and thought like, okay, this was a risky situation. And what was really risky about it is that no one was kind of aware of the fact that this data was out there and that there was no sense of this is a difficult situation. That's the first time that kind of I really experienced, I would say, the pain, because I started looking into ways how to tackle that, and I never found a good solution. Yeah, there are enterprise solutions helping you to manage access of employees to software and to data, but I never found a good solution, let's say, for a fast-moving environment. Yeah? And that's really very much, I would say, the moment that got me thinking.
Excellent. So walk us through a little bit more on how you were thinking about how you would buy and sell a lot of what you're building. Because when I think about the challenges of trying to secure data, especially when you look at a company like yours, um, you have not only to educate a lot of people, you have to um, help the CEOs or whoever the companies are that are using something like Airtable to train people to think differently, and then you have them to trust you as a emerging platform. And so there's a lot of that which requires buy-in from the internal organization, maybe some education. Walk us through a little bit about outreach, who your customer is, and what it is that sort of clicks in their mind that they're like, hey, look, this is exactly what I need, and this is why I'm going to engage.
Yes. So let's start with the problem. I spoke to a super fascinating security engineer from N26 the other week, and I asked her the question like, what's the biggest challenge that she has in her day-to-day like life, keeping her company secure. She also works with quite some external clients, helping them with ISO certifications and so on. And her answer, like, she didn't even think for a second. She immediately went like, visibility. That's my number one challenge. Yeah. So the obvious next question is like, why is visibility such a kind of security challenge for you? And I loved the sentence that she said. It's a great quote. She simply said like, well, everything that I don't know is a security challenge or a security risk or a security threat. And that makes sense, right? Because what you don't know, you can't protect. And with that sentence, we're already getting very much to the essence of the problem that we are tackling with Cakewalk. Companies have employees. Employees access in a kind of very decentralized manner these ways software. Employees integrate software into a company's processes, and companies have no visibility anymore of what's going on really. And that's a major security risk. employee accessing applications, employees uploading data to applications, which is a good thing, right? From an efficiency perspective, don't get me wrong. We want everyone to use these applications, but you as a company want to understand what's going on. And I would say we are seeing a new dimension of that problem with the rise of fantastic AI tools that entered the market in the last 12 months, because that's almost the next level of tools out there, even more SaaS usage, even more tool usage, and also the way these tools start to interact with your existing system landscape is a next level. And again, same problem here. You as a company don't even know that your sales team is using certain AI tools and maybe even connected that to your existing system landscape, which gets us into the problem of machine-to-machine access. And this is essentially what we are tackling for companies, because we help companies to really get to instant visibility in terms of what applications and what accesses are out there, but also to establish a very easy to implement access control logic, so that you actually tackle the problem at the origin, right? Visibility, trying to discover things from the top is good, yeah. But the gold standard should be that people kind of request for access before they actually access something. And that's actually also the best way for a company to get to a proper, I would say, asset overview in terms of what's really out there. That's I would say, the problem and the product in a nutshell. You've also asked, like, who do we have to convince as a still young company? The typical buying persona for Cakewalk is the head of IT, the IT manager, or the security manager in a company. These are the people who are operationally involved in the process. Yeah, and of course, there are tons of strong arguments for many other stakeholders in a company, while implementing a solution like ours does make tons of sense, even in the early days.
Yeah. So I think that the word that stood out for me was visibility. It sounds like a lot of the leadership in the company is lacking visibility on not only how their colleagues are using services, but how even colleagues are building and interacting and interconnecting services. And so part of what it sounds like you're helping them to do is providing that visibility, and then providing some structure for control on authorization and access. Now,
100%.
walk us through a little bit about how that evolves. Like in your ideal organization, how does that evolve? You know, the traditional toolkit out there for identity access management and role-based access management, a lot of those already exist for traditional apps, and you would build them in. Whereas what Cakewalk is more of it's a new way of looking at integrating SaaS products, and SaaS products are interconnected. How do those two converge?
That's a great question. Yes. I mean, yes, there is a first generation of identity and access management kind of platforms out there. Some of them are really great tools. I would say a few things have changed, why they are not the perfect kind of starting point for every company. And one major insight here is, I would say, that most of these companies are more built for enterprise customers. Most of these companies are they are powerful, but they are also pretty complex in terms of initial onboarding and also in terms of maintenance. Yeah, they are by now managed service providers to help large enterprise customers to roll out some of these IAM platforms. And what I'm really convinced of is that there's a new generation of companies who don't have the internal resources and also not the financial means to go for such a complex process. They need something that seamlessly integrates into their landscape. They need a solution that you can literally roll out within minutes. And there are a few things attached to what it means to roll out a solution within minutes. Like it really all starts from one thing, or from one topic that all relates to the question of how you interact and connect and integrate with the very tools that you want to discover. Yeah? What you see in many of the existing solutions is that companies would have a few tools in their identity and access management solution that are pretty with a very high level of integration or very deep level of integration. And that takes tons of time. For these few applications, you then have also kind of powerful automations. But these few deeply integrated applications will be 10% or maybe even just 5% of the actual tool landscape that is out there. And that's a development that I really see in the market, that there's no point in having, from your identity and access management perspective, just a few deep integrations with a few tools. What you really need as a company, coming back to visibility, is to immediately see the entire landscape of software out there. And that's one of the core promises that we make, that you can get to that discovery within a very, very short period of time with zero integration effort as a customer.
Yeah, and it's very fascinating for me that for those of the listeners who are familiar with OWASP, that the OWASP top 10 are the top 10 web application security risks, and number one in 2021 is broken access control. And in many ways, it's really interesting to see that you have targeted the first one, broken access control, perhaps insecure design, which is number 4, security misconfiguration, number 5, and number 7, identification and authentication failures. And to some extent, what I'm curious about is how much you think that in a world where more and more users use Cakewalk, they re-architect the way that software is built because of Cakewalk.
Yes, that's a great question. I wanted to come back to the facts, Carlos, first, that you just mentioned. That's really important to bear in mind, right? 80% of the security incidents or data leakages out there are related to kind of identities, right? And identities, of course, like there's tons of threats that you have within this broad space of identities. It can be kind of a phishing attack, so someone gets a hold of your passwords. But what you really need to understand, and again, we're coming back to visibility now, is the broader your surface of attack is, the weaker is your overall posture, right? Your overall security posture. And that's why access controls and tight access controls are so important to enhance your overall security positioning, right? And that's why, in fact, there's a super strong connection between tight access controls, least privilege, ideally, access controls, visibility, and kind of reducing your surface and attack. And coming back to the quote that I shared earlier, being able to actually understand your surface of attack before you actually start to protect it. So those numbers are really, really fascinating. To your other question, I mean, I guess it's interesting to understand where normally a company stands when they integrate a solution like ours. Normally, what we find in companies is some in-house solution. Yeah. In-house and in-house solution would probably mean there's a certain process in place that people are supposed to at least submit an access request when they kind of introduce a new tool, or when they want to get access to a new application. That can be via email. This can be like in a Slack channel. And some poor person in the company has the cumbersome task to kind of get hold of all this and kind of host a spreadsheet where you kind of have some sort of asset management. Running this, as you can already imagine when we're just speaking about this, running this in a manual manner is next to impossible, though, right? People won't stick to this process because that's simply not how people are wired. Yeah, write an email before you access something. Well, I might also not. And nobody realizes that's the problem. There's no real consequence because people can just bypass such system. And then from the person who's supposed to host that asset list, Like the list is out of date the second you updated it. Yeah. So that's some I would say indication or background why it's so cumbersome and difficult to run this show in a merely manual manner. Yeah. But there's a lot at stake. Yeah. And that's what companies, in my perspective, increasingly understand. We see a clear tendency that more and more companies early on go for ISO 27001 certifications, or in the US market for SOC 2 certifications, to enhance their InfoSec standards. And I guess that's my strong hypothesis. That's for two reasons. One reason is that more and more people understand that a robust security posture is like of highest importance for your company. At the same time, this has become a revenue enabler, right? Especially if you're a B2B company, your customers will make this a requirement, yeah? That you have super strong standards here. And that's good news, of course, for everyone who's selling security products.
Yeah. I wanted to keep on pushing on this idea of what the future organization looks like, though, because I think one of the interesting things that we spoke about at one point, and I don't know how near in the future this is, but it's much more dynamic in terms of roles and role definition. Right now you have a more of a classical model, right? You belong to an organization, you belong to a group, you're a sort of user, or you're something else, right? And then that defines your access policy. But you build in a lot more flexibility, not only for individuals but also for machines. And so, I'm curious, what is the future of the world? What does an organization look like 10 years from now when they're using Cakewalk? What does it allow them to do that you wouldn't normally do? And I'm not talking about transitioning from manual to automatic. I'm talking about how does work fundamentally change because of your existence?
I love that question, and that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So you mentioned something very important here, and that's like group-based or role-based access, right? I mean, to be fair, introducing a role-based access is very challenging for most companies today. And if you are able to introduce role-based access, you're already kind of achieved quite something. Just for everyone to understand what that means, it means like you ultimately define, like for every role in your company, employee in the marketing team, leader of a marketing team, and so on, what the like normal standard default accesses look like that someone in this role should have. Having such sort of structure is a major milestone for your overall access control policy. And actually, it sounds very, very complex. But at the end of the day, once you sort of implemented that, it actually makes your life easier because it takes away ambiguity. Yeah, it's very black and white. And normally that's a good thing for processes, right? So that's the first comment that I wanted to make. Implementing a group-based, a role-based access is a great achievement already today for a company. Now, when I look into the future, what I see and what's something, or what is something that I'm really, really passionate about, is the future is going to go beyond kind of default roles or groups. It's going to be more behavioral. Like there are patterns that we see, there are patterns that we can recognize within organizations. And within these patterns, you have typical sort of excesses that look healthy, and there will be patterns that look non-healthy and non-normal, right? And that's definitely a development that is going to come, and that is going to be a change for in the way companies will think about access controls. And that's something that we at Cakewalk, fair to say, also extremely passionate about.
I love this idea of patterns. Very interesting. And it sounds like when you're saying patterns, and maybe now we're going into like future sneaky stuff in your vision here, but it sounds like patterns are both and maybe an overlapping with identities. So you know who you are, you know what pattern, and when things might be able to happen. Um, if we rewind the clock a little bit back to your original customer when we were talking about them, some of them might be too early to engage with you, maybe not. what advice would you give to any founder starting a company right now, hiring the first 2 or 3 employees? What would be a good foundation for them to think about that would enable them to then either engage with you down the road or at least prevent a series of issues? Because not everyone comes from the same background you do, and so as a consequence, they might be focused building something entirely unrelated to what you offer, and may not necessarily take the right steps early days. So what would be your top 3 recommendations?
Yeah, also a great question. Thank you, Carlos. And actually, I posted about this today on LinkedIn. So here's the thing. The world has changed. We spoke about that. Security is a threat, or insecurity is a threat for every company out there. And I guess the number one mistake that companies can make and should not make is to ignore this in the early days for too long. It's always easy to say, okay, look, I need to build my business now, right? I need to find product market fit. I need to make my first hires. I might need to close a fundraising round. Yes, that's all true. The longer you wait, the more painful it will get at some stage. And this stage where you need to tackle access controls, it's going to come. That's set in stone. Yeah. So it's going to come, and the longer you wait, the worse the exercise will get. So my clear number one advice is implement very practical. You can get going in a super 80-20 manner, but implement very easy, practical processes from day one. Educate your early employees that this is kind of an important part of your company culture. That's how I would put it these days. Yeah? Explain to your people why this is relevant as management. Make it a top management priority. Explain to your people the why and the how. Yeah? And then get going with an easy, practical process in the first place. And an easy, practical process in the first place to me means there needs to be some sort of asset overview somewhere. Someone needs to be responsible for that overview in the first place. Maybe it's actually the CEO in the very early days. It can be your CTO. Educate people that everyone should use great software, but they need to kind of adhere and stick to a certain access request process. This can be a simple Slack notification in the first place that you can also review, right? And where you have a history, so that you can document that there's at least a practical process in place. This is how I would go and review this once a quarter, because once you've got that baseline in place, it will be way easier for you to enhance your process and take next steps, versus a world where at some stage and at some day it's just utter chaos, right? And you need to get going with kind of backward engineering, trying to understand what has grown in your company. That's going to be a very, very painful experience. And again, you will reach that point. Any company will reach that point where some customer is going to say, hey, but I want this from you. Can you give me some proof, that you're running this, because this is important for us? That's my number one advice here.
Nice. Well, it was very fun to chat very quickly about what you're doing and how you're doing it. For anyone who wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Well, get a hold of you, and then you will get me in touch.
I see how it is. I'm your sales department now, huh? Nice. Well, guys, we'll share with the links, Johannes's blog post, his website, and different ways that you can get in touch and engage with Cakewalk. But
Sure.
yeah, it was very fun and quick to share your story and what you're building. And thank you for joining us, Johannes.
Thank you so much, Carlos. This was fun as always.
Next time, guys, talk soon.
Bye.